So we are talking the Transfiguration, directed by first-time director Michael O'Shea, who also wrote this, and stars Eric Ruffin as Milo and Chloe Levine as Sophie. The story here is more of a drama than a horror film, but it definitely does have some horror elements, both kind of vampiric and kind of serial killer. So if you're into either of those things, then you may want to check this film out. But let's discuss what the film is actually about. It focuses on this young African-American boy called Milo, who has some crippling kind of social anxiety and is a true outcast. He walked in on his mother as she was kind of committing suicide by splitting her, slashing her wrists, and as such has this kind of fascination with blood and almost envisions himself as a vampire and truly believes he's actually a vampire himself. But he is also interested in the kind of vampire in media, big fan of kind of all these vampire films and such, and he meets this girl with very kind of social issues herself called Sophie, who seemingly has suffered some kind of abuse. It's never really elaborated on too much, but you can kind of, you know, draw your own conclusions. And she's the sort of girl who really just tries to get the kind of human connection by kind of sleeping with everyone, basically. And these two are inevitably kind of drawn together and kind of form a kind of a bond and somewhat of a kind of romantic interest. And it's really the story of these two sort of people and their story, and on the backdrop of this kind of like sort of poverty-stricken urban environment with kind of crime. And in the meantime, this little lad is out killing people and drinking their blood. So what is this film like? I've got to say, it was a thoroughly interesting film. I don't feel it entirely works. I do feel the plot is somewhat meandering and kind of things don't always pay off, I would say. But nonetheless, I would say it's handled with an assured hand. It's surprising this is the first time director, I've got to say, because it does feel that there's definitely some confident filmmaking here. So I've got to say, as a kind of filmed piece of entertainment, it kept my interest. You know, I was intrigued to see what kind of happened, and the performances were very mesmerising. I mean, the guy who played Milo, Eric Ruffin, I thought was very good. There are a couple of times maybe I thought his line delivery was a little lacking, but he's such a kind of like a messed up character, you can kind of forgive it almost and just put it down to the fact that he is this really weird social outcast, so it kind of makes sense within the film. But I thought, generally speaking, the acting here was all very good. And the premise as well is pretty interesting. And if you're a vampire fan, you'll kind of like listening to all these kind of references on various different kind of vampire fiction. And, you know, it mentions obviously all the classics like Twilight and True Blood, along with other things, obviously Near Dark. Pretty loads of stuff gets mentioned. So if you're a vampire fan, you're going to kind of like this movie just for the kind of the references and stuff like that, I feel. There is some quite extreme violence speckled throughout the film. There's not lots of it, but when it does hit, it's quite, you know, quite hard hitting. I just feel sometimes this film just doesn't really go anywhere. It just seems to be meandering, and you feel plot points are kind of left hanging and stuff like that. It is quite subtle. There are certain things that happen in the movie that I feel are maybe a little bit too subtle for some people, and you'll kind of. But it does a good enough job, I feel, of getting you motivated. I just feel it spends too much time on things it shouldn't. Lots of shots of, you know, Milo just kind of walking along the street and things like that. Again, I just felt maybe it could have been tightened up a little bit. And there are certain plot points that don't seem to really pay off, and you're thinking, well, you know, why was that even in here, to be honest? But, you know, it definitely has some kind of social commentary, interesting characters, a confident filmmaker, I feel, and some good ideas here. So overall, it's well worth a watch, I would say. But it's not an action film. It's not really a vampire film with kind of supernatural elements. But it's probably worth your time. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.